This is the Whimsy Farm Podcast. I'm Carolyn Crane.
There's a big wide world right out your door. Good people doing good things. Whoa, it's a big wide world. Now is the time. Now is our time.
Welcome, everyone. Today I spend an hour with Mark Dyken, an activist and musician living in the Sierra foothills in Northern California. The drummer of the band Clan Dyken, Mark and his brother Bear, who plays guitar and writes most of the band's music, has been visiting the Navajo Reservation in Arizona for a quarter of a century. Their story involves Peabody coal, forced relocation of resistors, relief efforts, and most importantly, the Dineh themselves. Welcome to the Whimsy Farm Podcast, Mark Dyken.
Oh, thank you. It's just so lovely to be here and to see you and do this thing again.
Yes, we have been on the radio before, and we have been in person before, supporting what you and I are going to share with the audience today. And that is your over 3 decades now commitment as an activist to the Dineh people and to the Beauty Way. Can you tell us a little, for those people who are not familiar with your work, what it is that you and your family have been doing and why it's important?
Well, sure. And let's just start. You mentioned the Dineh people, and most folks know them as Navajo. But that's what they call themselves, the Dineh. And we have been going to visit elders and families in an area that has been under forced relocation due to proximity to one of the world's largest coal strip mines. And so way back in 1974, the Navajo Hopi Resettlement Act was passed in Congress, and the idea was to allow Peabody coal greater accessibility to this area of really rich coal, which happened to be beneath the land that is on the Navajo Reservation. The Hopi Tribal Council at the time was more corporate friendly, and just through an amazing and really ugly legal process, land that had been traditionally Navajo land for many thousands of years was transferred to the Hopi tribe so that these coal leases could be opened up. And the Navajo or Dineh people who were living there were then told that they all needed to relocate. And over 10,000 did, and that did not work out well for people. They were moved from their traditional lifestyle with living in the hogan, raising the sheep, and put into subdivisions, some of which were built with radioactive uranium tailings for the base of their concrete. And so amazingly, it didn't work out. What a surprise. It didn't work out. People didn't know how to live like this, didn't know about electric bills, and didn't know about this kind of home maintenance. And subsequently, a lot of those people wound up losing the homes, a lot of poverty. And then the people who said, no, we're not leaving, were cut off from all aid from both the Bureau of Indian Affairs and even the Navajo Tribal Council, because now it was illegal to stay there. So there are 3 land designations in this region: Navajo partitioned land, NPL, Hopi partitioned land, HPL, and joint use area, JUA. So the Navajo Dineh people who lived on what was their traditional land for a long time, but now found themselves on these new maps living on HPL, Hopi partitioned land, were required by law to leave their homes. And that's been the basis for this resistance since we got involved in the first trip that I made out there was in 1991, and we've been going back every year to support. It was when we first started, it was almost exclusively elder women who were like the spokespeople and the leaders of that movement. And of course, that was a long time ago. They were elders then, they've passed on. And so now it's people our age and a little bit older who are the leaders. And the cool thing is there's some families moving back to the land. The coal mine has subsequently closed. So it's not the acute issue of the immediate destruction of the land, but the environmental degradation and the poverty and the hardships that were left behind are still there. And that's why we continue to go.
What gave you the idea to begin to go there? What sparked this activism in you?
Well, I first met folks who told me about this in the early 80s. We got called to go. Buffy St. Marie couldn't make it, and apparently they couldn't find anybody else. So we wound up being part of a benefit show with Dennis Banks in San Francisco. And we got to know him a little bit there. He told us about this, and I followed it from a little bit of a distance and then met some people who were actually going there. It was the Veterans for Peace organization. And I went on that first follow-up trip afterwards. I've been interested in looking at activism through the lens of what was done to the indigenous people of this land and how that speaks to the legacy of the way America treats people in general. And this whole idea that we came in here, European colonialists came in here with an air of superiority and an incredible penchant for violence and a lust for this land. And I have long felt somewhere deep inside of me that we should have paid closer attention to what was here before. And if we had listened to what the people who knew how to live on this land were saying when we first got here, I think the entire world would be a different place. We are now under an existential threat of global climate change, not to mention the existential threat of our military industrial complex. And to me, you can see the roots of those two existential threats in the way that America was colonized by the Europeans who came here. And in my time of being on reservations, working with indigenous people, I have absolutely come to believe that the indigenous wisdom and the people who hold that, they have answers to questions we haven't even figured out how to ask yet. And they have answers to ways that we should be living that we were just so blind and arrogant to, that are so absolutely simple. And now even our most advanced scientists are coming to agree with what were spiritual and basic tenets of indigenous life in the Americas, which is we are connected to all life, that everything here is sacred, that every person has a place here, that we are not much different from our four-legged, winged, or swimming relatives than we are from each other. And that's the way we're supposed to be living. And so once you are exposed to something like that and feel it this strong in your heart, I just don't know how else you could respond except to say, how can I possibly support you? And for me personally, I get so much more from being there than I could ever hope to bring. To spend time with people who have a completely different perspective. And let's face it, Carolyn, if there was ever someone who should have a reason to not trust you just for the way you look, you would think it would be indigenous Americans looking at descendants of European colonizers. But what I found is if I come there with humility and openness, I'm more than accepted. People want you to be there. People want that story told. And that's a big part of why we do this the way we do it, is the solidarity and the chance to let people on the outside world know that this is still going on. These grandmothers are out there making those sacred fires, saying the prayers, singing the songs, still speaking that language that grew up from that very place where they live, walking on the bones of their ancestors, and really being in tune with what's going on. And that's what the beauty way is. That's the one of the basic tenets. And again, you got a white guy telling you this, so just, you know, take note that I'm just an observer who gets to spend time there. But what I have seen is this concept of may I walk in beauty. And that means may I be in harmony with all that's around me. And can I be present enough, be in the moment enough to see the beauty before me, behind me, above me, below me? And that's part of that way of life. And that's why we call it the Beauty Way Tour. We did an album called Revive the Beauty Way. This concept of walking in beauty and living in true harmony with the world around us, that's what this is about.
Then you've said we, and you've mentioned the band, but can you talk a little bit about Clan Dyken and its musical presence on these trips, and as a fundraising agent as well?
Sure. You know, we do have a funny name for a band, Clan Dyken. Dyken is our last name, and at one point, everybody in the band had the same last name. My brother and I have been playing music together since we were little kids, so that's a long, long time. And we came up in that age of progressive activism when it was taking off, like in the 60s and 70s, and always felt that music had this power to make our world a better place. And that's what's really at the core of a lot of our music. My brother writes almost all the music that we do. We do some covers, and a few of us has had some contributions, but my brother Bear is a real incredible observer of things and has a great way of putting it to music and to word, poetry, if you will. And so this combination of activism and music, it, for me, again, personally, I want my poet artist's heart to be in all parts of my life. I don't want it to be separate. And the concept that music should only be some kind of entertainment and escape, of course it does that for us, and it does all kinds of things. But to say something with your music and to believe it, and then to use it as a tool to actually physically like raise money and then be able to bring food, firewood, supplies to these people who mean so much to me in a way that I could never do what they do, because that's where Creator put them. My ancestors, we left the bones of our people across a pond and a great big continent. So to me, it's important that those people stay there. That's their role. This is not some kind of weird benevolent charity or something like that. This is us understanding that this is what we can do to support those people doing what they should be doing, which is staying right there where they were meant to be. And the longer they stay and the more they feel like the world supports them in that, the world is a better place. They are able to do their medicine, their prayers, what they know works. And if we can support that by doing this, that's not charity. That's understanding that we have a common shared destiny that is enhanced by working together in this way. So that's how the music ties into all this. It's part of that.
I appreciate what you said about charity and its counterpart, solidarity, which is I think what you're striving for. And there are people who can just contribute money, and then you buy materials with that. Now, there are also people that come with you. I know this because I once came with you quite a few years ago now, and it was a remarkable experience, incredibly humbling experience, and for me to be in the role of a descendant of a colonizers going to Dineh land and offering my help with all the humility that I was full of humility, and I was really amazed by the grace with which I was met. And I still remember quite a few of those. I'm still in touch with some of those people, Tim and Belinda, for instance. Um, can you talk a little bit about what happens on these trips? How do you get there? How do you distribute what you have collected? What does it look like?
For me, and I'll give you a little perspective on it. For me, it's awesome to be in the role that I have or that my brother has because we get to see the entire thing. So we get to see each one of these shows, these concerts that we do to raise this money is a special event of its own. And each one of these communities responds in a special way. And we have a part of these shows that we do, you know, about the blanket dance. We were taught by Danny Blackgoat, who is the son of Roberta Blackgoat, who is one of the original resistors out there, about this way of bringing people together, circled around a drum. It builds a community, and then a blanket goes around, and people put what they want into that blanket or what they have, and that's what we use to raise these funds to take out. Well, that magic from each one of those shows builds on itself to the point where we can make this trip out there. So from where we live in California to get out to that reservation, which is north of Flagstaff a little bit, that part of the res, you know, it's a pretty long drive. It's through some desolate country, but we'll usually have a few folks coming with us. We often take the band's tour bus and load that up with goods and supplies. We get to Flagstaff. We may meet some other supporters. We may meet some of our guides who will take us around in places, although we've been going for long enough that we can get around pretty good out there now without folks. Then we'll do some shopping in Flagstaff. We also will meet delivery trucks that are bringing us supplies. We may have rented trucks, we may have folks with trailers, depending on who shows up to volunteer at that point. We also coordinate with, sometimes groups are coming from as far away as Colorado. Last year there was a group that brought young urban people. It was the most incredible thing I'd seen in a long time. They had a camp of probably 100 folks from different inner city environments out there working on the remote parts of reservation, helping with sheep herding and roof repair. So anyways, we'll gather up there, and then we make this journey. The last leg of the journey, it's about 80 miles from Flagstaff to get out to this part of the reservation where we are, which is close to Haute Villa, close to Hopi Land. And we'll get out there, and it's pretty remote. All dirt roads, not much for signage. You know, people identify their property by a painted tire out on the long drive. The Dineh folks don't live in communities. They're spread out, so there's nobody lives very close to each other, even families. And we have a few different people that have hosted us over the years. So our camp will be at someone's house, usually, you know, like a hogan. So, and like when we stay at the Smiths, where we've stayed the last few years, we get use of one of the hogans. Then there's a storage building there, and depending again on the size of the group, people immediately start building boxes. So everyone's, you know, we're going to deliver this year to about 65 families. So we will be splitting up 65 what we'll call units. You know, there's going to be their vegetables, their fruits, their depending on what we get, might be turkeys, this or that. And then we have a wood crew that's going out either cutting or supporting local woodcutters, or sometimes we are able to buy a lot of wood and get it shipped out there. There's not much wood, firewood in that area. And then people will load up trucks and go on individual delivery missions. And everyone is out pretty much the whole day. You may make as many as 5 or 6 deliveries in a day. You may only make 1 or 2 because that's how far you got to travel to get out to see the folks and then go to the next house. And so we do that in groups. And when we were first going, we always had interpreters and people with us. But now, like I say, we've been out there long enough. People know who we are. And it's also not as contested. In the early years when we went there and the coal mine was still active, there was a lot of funding via BIA and federal money that came to the Hopi Rangers. And they were a pretty oppressive police force. We had to move under cover of darkness sometimes. We were under surveillance We had caravans pulled over and questioned. Usually white folks are able to, not be hassled too much, but your guides could be really threatened. And this was all technically illegal at the time. Well, with the coal mine shut down, there's not so much police presence anymore, so it's much easier for us to come and go. But the need is still great. And I think when you spoke about it being humbling, for me, one of the big humbling parts is we're out here and we think we have needs, and you get out there and you quickly identify the difference between needs and wants. And people out there are living much closer to that, to the bone, to where what they need is what it takes to survive. What we need out here is, oh, that extra latte with my avocado toast. And I'm not to pick on it. We should have fine things in our life, but so should they. And it should be equally distributed as close as possible. And when you have people living in below third world country living conditions, strictly due to politics and greed, that should be unacceptable. And that's what is, to me, if I'm allowing myself to indulge in my anger instead of trying to work on a solution, that's what makes me angry, is that we would allow this to happen and support it. And by and large, many people think that Indigenous folks should just give up and join, remember that whole thing with Ronald Reagan about, they need to be like the rest of us. And again, just not understanding the important contribution that Indigenous people make by staying true to what they were originally instructed to do. That's important to all of us, and it needs to be preserved.
Yes, well said. And thinking back through your decades of going to the Navajo Reservation, are there any grandmothers or elders whose stories particularly stand out to you as remarkable or outstanding?
Well, I think they all do. We got closest probably to the Benally family, and Alice Benally. I'll tell you just a side story. One year, she visited out here and stayed at my house, and I, you know, gave her my bed, and I didn't change my bed sheets for like a month after that. I just wanted to sleep in the vibration of Alice having slept in my bed. But here's why, to me, what has always been so impressive about these grandmothers, especially, is they didn't know anything and probably didn't care one bit about outside politics. If the Navajo Reservation in particular is the biggest reservation in the country, and when you live out in the middle of that, you literally do, especially the way they lived, they didn't have a television. They didn't even, some of them didn't even have so much as a radio. Like when 9/11 happened, it didn't make any difference, right? When COVID happened, it made a little difference. A lot of great turmoil or change that happens in this outside world, it doesn't even reach there for a long time. So to have folks like that take up this political cause and use their wisdom and their way of thinking and their understanding of how the world works to be effective enough to eventually wind up speaking in Congress, testifying before House subcommittees, organizing active resistance to multinational billion-dollar corporations and slow them down, and eventually, between their resistance and then the world finally figuring out that burning coal isn't such a great thing, they outlasted this coal mine. That is an astonishing achievement. I mean, they don't have the kind of organization that even just you and I as lay people out here in the world, we could access that. We're talking about people, when you talk about grassroots organizing, that is, to me, one of the most impressive organizing and focused resistance campaigns I've ever witnessed. So they're all heroines to me. It just phenomenal individuals. And when I look at like Alice or Pauline Whitesinger or Roberta Blackgoat, and you would look at them and you think they're frail old women, and yet take a moment and look into those eyes and then tell me what you see, and watch them weave or watch them walk amongst their sheep or survey their land, and you'll come away with a whole different impression of who this is and why what they do is so crucial to me. It's absolutely crucial to human existence.
Can you talk a little more about what role the grandmothers played in shutting Peabody down versus just the project running its course and they would have left anyway?
Yeah, no. So again, just think about this. These are some things that I've been told about, and I've witnessed the aftermath of. Um, Standing in front of bulldozers and saying, "You will not come in here." Just making a point of when this land redistribution plan was laid out, a massive amount of financing was put into erecting barbed wire fences to designate, here's Hopi partition land here, and you can't put your cattle here, you can't hunt over here, and this is joint use area, so you can do this here, and we're going to restrict the size of your herd and all of this stuff. And for them to say no, for them to go get their wire cutters and start cutting down barbed wire fences in the middle of the night, this is direct civil disobedience, but it remained nonviolent. And then to first go to their tribal councils, then go to their to corporate headquarters, they've been everywhere, United Nations, they've been all around the country and even sometimes internationally to speak about what's going on their land, which ties to indigenous issues all around the world. They raised the profile of this resistance. And again, I just think about this. A multinational corporation that's armed with lawyers and connections to politicians and you name it, every advantage, versus people who are living absolutely close to the bone, who don't know anything, can't even read the language that these things are written in, have to get it translated, have to sit and go through it and to understand it. For them to be able to mount a cohesive, direct opposition campaign, it was extraordinary. And in their culture, it's a matriarchal culture, and these women have that kind of leadership role, especially in something like this, completely new ground. I mean, there were always men supportive, and especially younger, and a lot of us from the outside, but it was unquestionably led by elder women who their role was as this nurturer. They knew that this defense of the Earth Mother that we all depend on was what they had to be doing at that time.
And so they went to Congress, and then what happened? How did their
Well, they
wisdom
weren't,
impact?
that part of it really wasn't that successful. Unfortunately, there was a lot of support. I remember when I was in grade school and they taught us about national sacrifice areas. And that's what everyone said, okay, this has to be sacrificed for the greater good. And we all know that we all get advantage from these things. Power, electricity is really important in the way that we live our lives. But these folks are showing you that, first of all, they never even got any of the power. They just got all the environmental degradation from it. But what probably the most successful part of their campaign was to get other people involved. And that's when lawsuits and things started happening. And that slowed it down, slowed down expansion. And eventually world economics and our environmental state caught up to what these grandmothers were saying. They were climate activists before anyone ever had a word for it. They absolutely knew that this was a vital organ. You know, to them, this coal is like the liver of the earth. This was a vital organ that couldn't be removed from this being without great harm. And again, science has caught up to their understanding of things, whether it's, you know, how we exist on an energetic level, you know, like all the way down to our structure of the basic building blocks of the world, which are atoms. This is all understood in their way of life. And whether or not, you know, at the time there was any science about, you know, the acid rain and other environmental impacts of burning that coal, they knew that this was not, that this shouldn't be done. And their understanding of that, I think, has helped us with all kinds of things in the climate movement. And again, just for me, the idea of hope, that there's no way they should have thought they could oppose this and be successful. And sometimes it takes years and years and years to be an overnight success, but that's what they were.
It sounds like they, with their authentic truth, got the world to see them and to see what they were talking about, and that ricocheted powerfully and globally.
Yeah,
Am I
I
on
would
the
say
right
that.
track? Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, you know Louise Benally, and Louise was raised. They told her, Louise is like our age, and they told her when she was a girl, we need you to be able to walk in both worlds. And Louise, there's a film about this, Broken Rainbow. In Broken Rainbow, she's a 14-year-old activist, and she's still out there. And she's the one who took this mantle and has traveled around the world, continues to speak and educate people on not only the issues, you know, coming up against energy companies and coal, but just on indigenous land use, on indigenous cultural values, and how, of course, we can't ever go back, but what can we do right now to correct as much as we can correct in terms of our relationship with the original people here, and to find out, how do we work together? Because when we figure this out and work cooperatively with people who have different sets of wisdom and come about it in different ways, then our gifts can be appreciated too. There's nothing like being humble about who you are and where your people came from, and respecting that in other people. That to me could be a blueprint for why we can't, or for how we could bridge the gaps that seem to be increasingly dividing this country and the world.
So this podcast goes live on November 15th. So it's the second half of the month, which covers Thanksgiving. And after I went with you to the reservation, that was when I think I started feeling that Thanksgiving was no longer what I had enjoyed as a child. It changed for me. And now gradually, as I evolved into what I would call a post-colonialist, it seemed inappropriate to me. So I now have what I call a fall feast, rather than celebrate what once was my favorite holiday. And what is it like for the people who go with you? Because it is during this time of year, whether they are giving up their turkey and their stuffing and their pumpkin pie to be in a hogan and driving firewood out to what seems like the end of the earth. How does that correlate with celebrating Thanksgiving in the way that we were brought up to celebrate it?
That, you know what? That is a fantastic question and line of discussion, Carolyn. Wow, thank you for bringing that up. Because my own family, you know, they did a lot of Thanksgivings without me, And I understand why we want to celebrate Thanksgiving and give thanks, literally give thanks for everything we have. And I honor that. And there's always, something when we're out there on that day anyway. But for you to come out to give that up this one time, and maybe you'll be like some of us and keep going time after time. To me, there's a few things involved in that. Number one, it shows how important this is to you as an individual, that you're going to give up something that, as you said, for most people, this is one of their favorite holidays. This idea of gathering with your family and celebrating what you have. But for us to also identify and recognize that, just like this story of Columbus, this whole idea of this Thanksgiving, it's simply not true. And that needs to be recognized, that, some people talk about the story where actually people were killed. That it was a trap, that they were invited to a feast and killed like that. But more broadly, the idea of celebrating some kind of colonial superiority, and we're just going to give thanks to these people who have somehow they saved us, and now we're just going to run roughshod over them for the rest of our history here. Yeah, the awakening or the change of feeling that you had is common to folks who make a trip like this and are already feeling sketchy about it. And I think it's perfectly normal for us to reevaluate and say, you know what, I'm going to come up with another version of this holiday, or of this version of a holiday. And so for those of us who are out there on the reservation on that day, yeah, we have a feast. And we get to celebrate with people, and sometimes it's the greatest feast ever. I'm like last year, just raggedly coming back from a long day of delivery, and it happened to be on Thursday, the day that most people are celebrating Thanksgiving. And there wasn't but a few of us, and it was pretty cold last year. And we gathered around a little wood stove, and pretty soon, oh, I have this, and it was like the stone soup thing. And pretty soon we had the most incredible feast late at night. And we sure didn't go turn on a TV and drink that extra glass of wine and fall asleep watching football. We had conversation around a fire with real people, and we maybe get an instrument out and play some music and actually spend time as human beings. And that, to me, it's a pretty good trade-off. Obviously I've been going for a long time, so that it's like an evolution.
Yes, it is an evolution, and it's like when you put those glasses on and see through those lenses, you can't go back.
Right.
So for my listeners out there who might be thinking, wow, this should be in a book. They should write a book about this. Here it is. It's been out for a few years now.
Yeah, I think
Can you
5.
tell us a little bit about your work with Shelly Muniz and the making of When the Creator Moves Me?
Yeah, so Shelly embedded herself with us for the year that she wrote that book. She went on a tour to several of the shows, and then made the trip out to the reservation and met some of the folks, had some great conversations with them, and then did a lot of research into our background as a band and the history of what has gone on there. And I think did a pretty good job of telling that story, combining the band and our activism. And this isn't the only activism that we do, but it's something that we really put a lot of energy into, and telling the story of what actually goes on out there and what has brought us there and why we keep going. And there's some good pictures in it. So yeah, if folks are interested, I think that thing is still available online in a few different ways. And we usually have someone when we come to the shows, if people come and see any of the concerts on the way. Of course, by the time this airs, I think we'll be wrapped up with that. And you can always go to our website too and find the book, or just ask us questions, or get involved.
And I'll have it in the I'll have it in the show notes on the YouTube channel and on my website so people can get all of that information. And let's mention your GoFundMe so if people are thinking, oh, I didn't make it to the show, or how do I get them some money to help buy firewood? You do have a GoFundMe.
We do have a GoFundMe, and there's a little bit of redesign going on our webpage, but the clandyken.com will have that GoFundMe posted. Or if you are a social media and a Facebook person, you can find us there. Or you can just go to GoFundMe, and it's called the 2025 Beauty Way. I think it's 2025 Beauty Way. I'm not sure how broad searches on GoFundMe are, but if you type Beauty Way in there, I'm sure we're going to pop up for you.
And I know that the concerts are in the past by the time this airs, but tell us where you visited. Where did you do concerts this year?
This year we did one here in our region, and then we go to the Nevada City area, which you're familiar with, and then we'll go up to Ashland and a couple of small towns in Southern Oregon to Kilma and Williams, and then we'll come down to Arcata and Sacramento, and we may stop. It wouldn't be a fundraiser, but last few years we stop and see an old friend of ours who is tied to the nuclear resistance. That's kind of how we got into even this. We spent years going, and we still do, connect with people at the Nevada nuclear test site. That's another one that's been shut down, where they were testing nuclear weapons. But that's where we met Corbin Harney, who is a Western Shoshone elder, and have long been connected to that community. And they're still active in the Las Vegas area, and we still stop there and check in on them. And so last year we played in Las Vegas on the way out to the reservation as well. And then we always bring instruments and music out to the res, and there's nothing like getting around a drum in a hogan or around the fire. So people can experience the music that way, or again, connect with us online. You can find recordings and things like that, or look us up on YouTube and explore.
Well, I'll be thinking of you, and maybe one of these years I will join you again. But I can assure you I'll think of you on these upcoming days. And I wish you the best. Is there anything that you want to add before we say goodbye?
No, just I really appreciate the chance to talk about this, and hope that your listeners find a little bit of something that'll pique their interest, that'll make them want to look into this. And again, I guess my message especially is to those of us of European descent. If we can look in our hearts and come to realize what our privilege has brought to us, if we could ever put out at a level of, say, pinch, I don't want to say pain, but you know what I mean, like an effort, not just, writing a check is pretty easy for us, but what can we give that might come even close to balancing the enormous privilege that our line of descent has afforded us here in this country, and make some kind of gesture, gift, work, whatever it is, to balance that out. We're the ones that need to take that. We need to be in this humble, supportive role. That it's our turn for that.
Mark Dyken of Clan Dyken, thank you so much for joining us today on the Whimsy Farm podcast.
My pleasure, Carolyn. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks to Mark Dyken of the band Clan Dyken for spending the last hour with us. Shelly Muniz's book, When the Creator Moves Me, is available to order from your favorite independent bookseller. You can visit the Dykens' website, clandyken.com, for information about supporting the Thanksgiving food run and to check out the band's impressive discography. The Whimsy Farm podcast is produced on the sacred ancestral land of the Anishinaabe people. Thanks to the California band Castle House for writing and performing our music. The Whimsy Farm podcast airs the 1st and 15th of each month on our YouTube channel, Carolyn Crane and Whimsy Farm, and wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Thanks to our underwriter, Just Play Productions, and to our paid Patreon members for their support. Please visit my website, whimsyfarm.net, and click the Patreon link to find a level of support that's right for you. There is also a free membership level. You can email me through the website as well as access direct audio and video links to all episodes. Everything you need is at whimsyfarm.net. Until next time, please remember the words of Utah Phillips, who said, "Too many good people are doing too many good things to afford me the luxury of being pessimistic." Get out there and create some positive change. Stay safe, everyone.
whimsyfarms.net